Roseline Deleu, welcome to Over the Bonnet.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I am well, and you have a background in Feng Shui, so how did you get into it in the first place?
Oh, that's a long time ago. That's good to get young again. I encountered feng shui when I was traveling in the train to London. I used to live in Belgium. That's what my accent is from. And I saw a big newspaper with a couple of pages on feng shui. Didn't know what it was. Took the 2 pages, put in my jeans pocket, and when I went back home, I started moving things around my place, the furniture and everything, and I started to have results. So I delved a bit more and started to find books. So I'm talking to you about nearly 25, 30 years ago. Yeah, more. Yeah, about 30 years ago.
You noticed changes, you noticed things. What sort of things did you notice that was happening?
Well, I still recall I was doing Tai Chi and Qigong at the time with a lady who was very intuitive and she could see the auras, okay? And I remember one day, after making some changes in my lounge room, and I went to the Tai Chi a couple of days later, and she said, "Your aura has changed. You must have changed something in your home." And I said, "Yes, indeed. I changed the furniture around and I cut the corners. I created the bagua. So it means I created like an octagon. I know instead of having everything aligned in square, I moved everything. And it created a total shift in my aura. And that led to her telling me, oh, I can see there is a change in you." Yeah.
What sort of change did you notice for you, though?
I felt I could breathe better. I was happier. I was just like really excited about learning something new and that I could actually, instead of, people when they feel down, not that I was feeling down, but when they feel down, they go to a counselor or they have to talk to someone. And actually what I was doing is focusing on what I wanted to achieve, or what I felt I wanted to achieve, because there's a difference, and then achieving it very quickly. So one of the major changes for me was to be able to come to Australia. I've always wanted to leave my country of origin since I was about 14, 15 years of age. And here I was at the time, late 20s, and I wanted to, come to Australia. But it was getting a bit more difficult at the time because, you were closing your borders. We had to fill in conditions. So what did I do? I placed a photo of a map of Australia in one of my sectors in the house that symbolizes the travels and helpful people. And, it started accelerating the whole process, which was stuck in the beginning. Yeah, so that was a big thing for me.
So you say you wanted to leave from the age of 14. Why leave your home country?
Well, I think I'm a bit of an adventurer. I like adventure, and I think from a very young age, I had relatives in England, and initially wanted to, learn English and live there. But it was very, very old style, and I was not feeling very welcome there. So I let it go when I was about 16, 17. I could feel that, the family didn't really want to have me there, and which is fine. And that led me to say, okay, where do I want to go? So I had two choices. Well, I was narrowing down where do I really want to go. And one place was Quebec, so because I speak French, and the other one was Australia. So I went to Quebec, and in a tiny bed and breakfast, I met two ladies from Australia, and they said, "Oh, why are you here?" And I said, "Oh, we're looking at migrating." "Oh, 9 months of winter, you crazy? Come and see us." They gave us the address. One was from Canberra, and the other one was from Cowra, and here we are. So we came for a visit first, loved it, and said, "Yeah, we're moving."
What did you like about Australia when you first moved here?
Oh man, the blue sky. I know this might be something crazy, but in Belgium there's a lot of gray sky, from what I remember, and that was affecting people's moods. So when I came, it was a blue sky, white clouds, and the trees, the landscape, everything was resonating so differently than Belgium. It was, I think the population density makes a big difference as well. You've got let's say about two people per square kilometer in Australia. While in Belgium, you've got about 380. So which is, it puts a lot of pressure when you've got a density that's higher, nowhere near, Bangladesh, of course, but which is much bigger, but much higher. But so it was more peaceful for me. The houses were nicer. When something is new and you like the place, everything looks nicer.
When you finally came out here, you'd already started to get an interest in feng shui. So did you continue to apply your trade and what you'd learnt once you were actually here?
Yes, so when you arrive in a new country, it takes you about 2 years to settle. Not only you've got to learn more about the language, but also you need to adapt to all the regulations, and you don't know anybody. So when you go to school and you're a kid, you've got some friends, but when you're an adult, apart from the parents that you can see or getting a job, in Belgium, I was writing two job application and I was getting the two jobs. Here in Australia, I was not a citizen, so it was a bit more difficult to do that. And didn't have connections where I lived, because my migration visa and permanent residency was in ACT. So, there's a lot of government work, which at the time I couldn't apply because I was not a citizen. So I decided to continue that passion of mine, and to delve into feng shui a bit more and making things happen, not only for me, but also for other people. And very quickly, I was invited to the first lecture that I gave. And I can tell you at the time, I had that sheet of paper in my hand and I was, looking at people, but also reading it. And I'm thinking, am I going to understand everything they're going to ask me? Am I going to understand all the words? And it went very well, actually. And from then on, I never looked back. And I've been doing that now, on such a regular basis that I live it. I live it. And it's living your truths that brings you happiness as well.
Do enough people do that?
There's a lot of, for the moment with what's happening around the world, people are very much living in fear, unfortunately. And I think feng shui is a tool for people to work on their environment, not only in your garden, but also in your home, which is either a house or an apartment or a caravan or whatever you can, whatever you've got or wherever you live. And it's to make that place and the garden harmonious so that you can be at peace with everything, rather than the most important is not about having, but it's about being. And a lot of sorry to bring a little bit of a tint here about the Chinese Feng Shui. The Chinese very much look at the money side. And in the early stage, when you had a Feng Shui master in China, you had a red envelope and you gave them a lot of money so that you could have a lot of luck coming to you. So the luck was bringing luck, health, happiness, etc. While these days we have, a tariff. So you've got a price list. Okay, you want a consultation, how big is your house? And then we discuss. And more you see that people are looking into health and well-being rather than the money side. Yeah. So it's really about being and not about having. And once people are going to shift into that consciousness of who do I want to be or who do I want to become, and that's when they start to open that door to their happiness.
It's interesting that you talk about the greed aspect of feng shui, Chinese feng shui. Do you think that it is too focused on that and that's all what a lot of people want out of it?
Well, I can only talk about the Chinese people and the Chinese families that I've met and the clients that I had, and that was mainly what they were searching. while all the other clients from different culture were looking for well-being.
When you're changing someone's house, what are the big things that you actually look for when you're actually trying to change someone's environment?
The first thing we do is having a conversation. We sit down and we say, all right, okay, what are your goals in life? What is it that you want to achieve? All right, okay, so I leave the decision in their hands and they want to open up. But, when I walk into a house, I know exactly with the layout of the house, the plan of the house, the way that people put their furniture or their paintings or their photographs or whatever is in which corner is going to reveal everything about their lives to me. So I don't mean to be rude and say, oh, I can see you've got a relationship problem or you've got a problem with your teenage son or something, I'm just going to say, okay, what is it that you want? And very often, from the first scan around the place, we go around and we walk through. Your home reveals so much about your life that we say, all right, okay, let's start changing so you can achieve what you want.
What's the biggest no-no that people do when they do set up their house without knowing what they're doing?
The question is, do they know about Feng Shui? Are they interested or not? If they're not interested in Feng Shui, you're going to have all sorts of things everywhere. Very often people have too much furniture around them. It's too much of having too many material possessions, and which is costing actually when you're looking at it. If you are renting or buying a house which has got 2 bedrooms, you've got an 80 to 100 square meters versus having a 4-bedroom, even having 2 rooms you're never going to use, but having those just in case somebody comes up. You just have a look at your budget and what is it that you want. What do you have this house? Do you live in this house for you? Or do you expect having people? And I recall I moved for a bit of time, quite a few times actually in Australia, and you're going to laugh. When I was in the smallest place with the less number of square meters, that's when I had the most visitors. Yeah, it's not because I had spare rooms that I had visitors in. So one house doesn't, maybe it doesn't seem to be the logic part. It's how you feel about the place and how people feel in your environment, and that's going to bring them in.
When you had that small place, what do you put it down to that you had plenty of visitors?
I think my sector 6, which is the travels and helpful people and visitors, was quite active. All right, okay. So it was the time that I was doing a lot of Feng Shui conferences, etc. I was living at the time on the Gold Coast, and I had quite a fair amount of followers there. So, from year to year, you build up your clients, you build up interest. I've got a couple of blogs on Feng Shui as well that I created. So, but definitely the conferences. I've organized yearly Feng Shui conferences in Australia.
You talk about your location on the Gold Coast. These days you're in Canberra. Is your location a factor?
I think it is, yes. The location is definitely a factor. I do not say that only from the Feng Shui point of view, but also from your astrolocality. So where you were born, if you go on some sites, you can discover, you put your date of birth, your time of birth, where you were born, etc. And then there is a map coming out of the world where you have all those lines. And definitely for me, Canberra is a really good spot for some part of my life. And then there is also a really strong career line. The career is not specifically career, but also life path. So my life path goes across from Darwin, Alice Springs towards Adelaide. And I must say that I feel very aligned when I'm in the centre of Australia or on that line that crosses Australia.
How much travelling do you do?
I do a lot of travel. I've got, in one of my areas, I've got the map of Australia with all little, stars where I've been. And apart from the East Pilbara and Goldfields, I've covered everywhere else in Australia. So I've been to Arnhem Land, I've been to APY Lands, which is Anangu, Pitjantjatjara, Yekaranjala Lands, so that's northwest of South Australia. I've done, of course, on Nullarbor, went all the way to Karratha, in the East Kimberley, and all the East Coast as well. So I've traveled a fair bit, yeah. Not only with work, but also with interest. So I travel for tourism, but I mainly prefer to go and live in places that you can have a better feel of that place. And definitely the centre of Australia, that red earth and those rock formation are definitely something that appeals to me, and I can feel drawn to it. Yeah.
So which is your favourite place? You've moved to Australia. Which is your favourite place down under?
Definitely Canberra. Definitely Canberra. I've travelled a fair bit around the world, and since I moved away from my country of origin, wherever I go, I'm asking, could I live there? And yes, I could live, in several places, but Canberra is my favourite place. You've got everything that you can imagine. Very lovely people, beautiful landscape. You've got, you're 2 hours away from the snow, you're 2 hours away from the beach. What else you want? Not too many people. People say, oh, either people like or they don't like Canberra. And we never say, oh, you should love it. Just stay where you are. But it's just like, that's a funny way of saying it. Because, yeah, you either love it or you don't. And I love it here, yeah.
You say you're still drawn to the Red Centre. What's your attraction there, and what sort of experiences have you had in the centre of Australia?
In the past decade, a bit more now, 2007 was my first encounter. I sat on the land in an outstation in Far North Queensland, and I started to connect more with the energies of the land. All right, okay, so I started understanding more about Aboriginal culture and respect, and understand that I'm a visitor here. And this is not my country, this is where I'm visiting. All right, so I've done a lot of work with people in about 24 Aboriginal remote communities, and definitely I find that Aboriginal people, it's like everywhere, you've got good ones and bad ones, but I found them fascinating. They're really, really good. They're very strong within their culture, within their knowledge, within their law. And their law is the law of nature, just to make it simple. All right, okay? And I think that is part of what I do, or how I implement Feng Shui around me. I live in Australia. I do consultation all over the world, but I consult in Australia with the energies of the land in Australia, not from Europe or from China. So when I implement Feng Shui, I bring in those elements, the nature element, the water, the wood, the fire, the earth, the metal, and the air. And everything that you've got around you will bring harmony into your environment, all right? So we see that there is nothing Chinese in my place. In the beginning, everybody starts Feng Shui with the Chinese. You're going to buy a 3-legged frog that you're going to put near your door. You're going to buy, a couple of mandarin ducks, and you're going to see if it's going to work for your relationship. And of course it's going to work. Why it's going to work? Because the person that you buy it from is saying, yes, it's working. So you believe that. And of course you're creating you're manifesting what you want. So that's a reminder. And by using everything that people have around their place and giving that object a mission to remind you of your goal, of what you want to manifest, it's working. And by not having anything Chinese, you stay with whatever you love or whatever belongs to the country. And as you can see behind me, this is a beautiful painting, and this is from Australia.
When people do get a Feng Shui consultation from you, then do they expect the Chinese aspect, or do they look for it, or is it something that they just look to you?
They're definitely not going to choose the Chinese aspect when they contact me, because on my website is very clearly saying that um, I've stepped away from the Chinese aspect. Occasionally, I will suggest a couple of things if people really want to use the Chinese Feng Shui, but this is not my culture. This is not me. So I cannot give any advice on people culture when I haven't been brought up in that one.
Other aspects, though, of Chinese feng shui that you do appreciate and you do sometimes look at?
The Chinese Feng Shui will give you some clear direction, which are more calculated. And if you are living in fear, then you go towards the Chinese Feng Shui, because they're going to calculate with their compass and they're going to give you some really clear instruction. You see the difference? While I do not want people to be in fear, and I prefer them to say, okay, what is it that I want? So rather than living in fear, it's living in manifesting and creating and dreaming what you want. When I say dream, it's like the dream time, it's the creation time. So it's not, sleeping and thinking, oh, yes, I might do that. No. The dream time is what is it that you want to create. So I think this is, to my understanding and my experience and the feedback from clients, they say, I much more prefer that rather than going to, live with the fear of, your front door is there and your back door is there. And within that year, you're going to have a car accident. You don't want to know that. Yeah. So we're going to say, okay, let's do with whatever we've got here. Let's make the best out of what we've got, and we're going to make it work.
How do you use the elements then to introduce a more natural approach to what you're doing with your consultations?
First of all, whatever surrounds you is important. And we are part of nature, and we are part of the oneness of that universe. We are stardust. And so when you start connecting with the elements, you start knowing that there is something that is missing in an area. All right, okay? And so you need to have the harmony of all these things around you to feel at home and to feel comfortable. So you bring in some touches of decor around you. So you can have a piece of furniture that might be nice. You might have a painting or a photograph that you like, and then that's going to bring that harmony. And where they're going to be placed strategically will create something that is to replace the Chinese aspect.
Is there much colour involved?
You can if you want to. Now, I remember years ago, long time ago, 20 years ago, I had some students in interior design that were painting the walls different colors. And I said, my walls are all white, all right? And you then add a touch, because you bring the light in when it's white. If you've got a green wall, you've got a red wall, it's a bit darker. So the light is life. So you bring in, with your white walls that you can have, you bringing that light. So that means you're bringing some yang, you bring some activity, something is active there, something is alive. And then you put a photo of something that's going to come out much nicer than if you've got too many colors or too much color.
Well, it sounds like if there's too much clutter, too much colour can also be a bad thing.
Oh yeah, less is better. Yeah, absolutely.
When you were visiting Central Australia, were you applying your trade out there? What was the reaction if you were?
No, I was not applying Feng Shui there. I wanted to know, I applied for work there in remote communities because, first of all, you don't go there. You can't go as a tourist, okay? Or wherever I went anyway, you need to have a permit to go. And my interest was coming from Feng Shui. I wanted to understand the living condition of Aboriginal people and why they're living 15 years less than we do. All right. So, and I wanted to understand the impact of housing on Aboriginal health. And that's how I started going in there. And then I saw that those people are in very remote places, and they can only live with whatever is available there. And there is no IKEA there. There's no way that you can have any furniture delivered to your place. So in some places, they were really well furnished. It all depends, as I said, a little bit everywhere. If you're close to a township, so you can have that furniture coming. But if you're far away, you might have a mattress. And unfortunately, this is not only in Australia, this is all over the world, it's not because you do not want to have things, it's because you can't have them, or it's becoming too expensive, or because you don't have that sense of belonging, so it doesn't belong to you. Some people need your mattress, they take it away, it doesn't come back. That happens because you share. And that's where we go back to what I was saying, less is better. But of course, when you've got too little, and if you have no mattress and you sleep in a place where there's none, you would have really big health problems. So I've done a lot of observation there. I didn't do any consultation because I didn't want to come across like knowing something that might not be appropriate. And I thought, well, I'm just going to see first what is happening and why people have some problem with their kidneys, with dialysis, and understanding why. And the houses, unfortunately, that are provided in those communities are, first of all, overcrowded. So you've got a 3-bedroom, you might have 15 people in one because there's not enough houses. And of course, when you have 15 people in a 3-bedroom home, what do you have? Mainly, beds and mattresses. So sometimes there's a lack of space to put a lounge room.
How did it affect you seeing that sort of thing?
You don't judge when you go there. I'm not there to judge. I'm there to observe and to see why and what is going wrong. If you've got cold tiles on the floor or concrete floor and you put a mattress there because people don't have a bed, what is going to suffer? Your kidneys, because you're cold. Not everywhere is a warm place to be. And in winter, the centre of Australia, it's pretty cold as well. So it's part of the problem.
What was the biggest thing, though, in your observations that you did notice, though? Was it just that living conditions?
At hindsight, it's the lack of awareness of people in Australia to understand that not everybody lives the same way and with the same conditions and don't have the chance that you would have in cities or in regional Australia. So not everybody wants to have a big house. Not everybody wants to have a television. I've been living without a television for 40 years and I'm happy without it. So who am I to say to someone what they need to do? We just have to work with whatever they've got. When people are ready, they talk to me and they will approach me to ask whatever they want, especially over there. But you're not there to judge, you're just there to observe and see, okay, what is it that I can bring in? And it's in the case of Aboriginal health, it's not only the food that is stocked in the stores in those remote places, which is really, it starts to change, but it's very unhealthy, all right? And there is, you've got walls of sugar, you've got walls of tea. So, if you do not give the opportunity to people to taste something else, then they're not going to try it. You see what I mean? And it's the same. If they have nothing else than what they've got in their house, how can they understand to live differently? They will see what's happening on TV with movies and everything, but it doesn't mean that they will find the necessity to have all that. It's different life. It's different people,
Did you find alcoholism a problem there when you were watching what was going on?
No more than with white Australians. I think per capita, you've got more non-Aboriginal people drinking alcohol in higher quantities than Aboriginal people.
With the Aboriginal influence on your feng shui, will you take it another step? Are you looking to further your integration of the Aboriginal mindset in what you're doing with creating harmony?
If I've got permission, yes, and definitely when I do go for a consultation. I definitely connect with the land and when the ancestors there. You've got houses that are built on massacre sites. People try to forget about that. All right, okay, but you've got entities in some houses, and it might be where people have been killed. Um, I've been in, unfortunately, in some massacre sites, and it's quite, you can feel it. You can feel it. It's really, I don't want to scare everybody, but you need to understand there is more than the 3 dimensions that we are perceiving. There's so much more. People who passed away or the ancestors on country, they're only a breath away. So it's just like when you go in a place, just pay your respect to whoever was there for centuries before we came.
You do talk about that acknowledgement of what has gone on before. How important is it for people to integrate that in all of their lives?
It's part of respect. Where do you come from? Where are you going? A lot of people go and do their, family ancestry because they want to see where they, what was happening. I think it is. It's important to know where you're coming from and where you're heading. And if you do not acknowledge what was in the past, how can you go forward? We all have, challenges with parents or grandparents or fights with family members. And you know what? This is part of life. You chose your family, between brackets, if that's what you want to believe, because you've had lessons to learn. All right, okay? But you also chose to come. I chose to come here because I had lessons to learn. And trust me, the last nearly 24 years that I've been in Australia has been an amazing journey. And that's what life is all about. It's not repeating the same pattern all the time. It's change. Life is change. I love moving things around my place on a regular basis because then you're shifting some energy and you're shifting your mindset.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about moving things around. Is it important to do that?
Oh, people do whatever they want, but that's what I would say. Yes, absolutely. Go, try, give it a go. Just move something, put it somewhere else, and put it with an intention. Yeah. So you need to give that intent into whatever you do. It's going to manifest.
COVID now is really ruling a lot of our lives. With what you're doing, how is that affecting what you're seeing with people that you're interacting with?
I'd like to say 2 things. First of all, I would like to make a similar, I want to bring a similar story. You remember about 200 and something years ago when Captain Cook came, or lieutenant at the time, came and put the flag and say, this is ours, put the fences up, decided that was your land, that was my land, that was, and decided there was no one here. Well, it's exactly the same what's happening for the moment here with COVID, with coronavirus. You're isolating people. So they were isolating Aboriginal people with fences. They couldn't go and hunt anymore in that place. Well, with what's doing for the moment, we're not allowed to go out with the isolation or the lockdown. And so people need to start understanding that is what happened 200 and something years ago when the invasion arrived. So that's one thing I want to say. On the other side, I would like to also say we have the chance to be at home, to have a look at the place in a different way. And during Melbourne lockdown last year was a big lockdown and people were very isolated, very stressed, very depressed. It becomes a norm now. Oh, we're in lockdown. Okay, all right, okay, we do it again. But the first big hit with Melbourne was really shocking for some people. And also people in Europe were finding it really challenging. So I've offered some Zoom sessions, and it was a weekly session that we were talking, and we were giving one task to realize inside their home for that week. And they had to do it, within the 24, 48 hours, so that the week after, when we met again, they could give the result. And it was amazing, the smile on people's faces. And a lot of them had said to me, Roseline, that you kept the same. You kept the same by giving us task and starting to manifest something, because we could start understanding that. Now, a lot of those people had lost their jobs, and some of them are still without a job. And it gave them that opportunity to be able to do something, going online and being part of a group of people they didn't have a clue, didn't know from a bar of soap. But that became a solidarity group. They were talking about things, they were talking between each other, after a few weeks, and started to talk to on the phone, saying, oh, how you going, And yeah, it was a very supportive way to use Feng Shui during those isolation times.
It's something that a lot of people are having to deal with, and the stress of that isolation. What's the big thing that someone can do that is having to deal with it to try and ease that stress during isolation?
The first thing that comes to my mind is to have something that is growing, like a plant. You plant a little seed and you see it growing, so that you see life is coming up.
That's one thing, is if someone doesn't have access to that, what can they do just in their own particular environment to move, change? Is it a matter of making, as you say, constant change?
It's to realize, first of all, whatever surrounds you, do you need everything? It's really a perfect time to declutter, because you're home. Either you work from home or you're not working. So open your cupboards, empty your cupboards, and say, all right, okay, you see all your containers, you might have some, tops missing, bottom missing. You just check everything you don't need, and you just live with whatever you've got instead of starting to buy anything. People are starting to buy online, which is great, because we can access all sorts of things from everywhere, and then reviewing their wardrobe as well. Okay, is it time for a change? If you want to spend money and if you can afford it, that's what you would do. Have a look at, okay, what is it that I would like? How is it that I would like to look like, And then buying online if you want to. But definitely is to realize that we don't need a lot of things to be happy. You don't need 50 Tupperwares. You don't need 50 containers. You might use 10 as a maximum. So, downsize to whatever you really need. And that is part of footprint. Yeah, the footprint that we live on this planet, Do we need a small place or do we need a really big place? And what is the impact of living in a big house, only two or three people, rather than living in a smaller house and having your space with less furniture and really with what you need?
There's an interesting saying that clothes maketh the man. Does your environment make the person?
Yeah, absolutely.
In what
You're
way?
influenced, but you are influenced with whatever you scan every single day. So you're scanning all the time. So whatever you see is whatever the message comes to your brain subconsciously or subtly. And so when I see out, I'm looking outside now, we've got a blue sky, there's a lot of wind today. When I can see the movement, those trees are happy to be in the wind. Yes, it's cold because I'm in Canberra in winter, but the sun is shining, So it's just like you see the green. You see, I need to cut my grass, don't have time because it's been raining too often. So it's still okay for the moment. So, but it's just like you feel good with whatever your surroundings are. If there's something that you don't like, or you receive the present that you didn't like, or you don't like the person, well, you don't have to keep that present or that object that person gave you. And I keep saying to people, the full moon is a perfect time to decide what to get rid of so that you have less in your life. So if you've got, I'll give you an example. I remember one lady once, she was in her 70s, and I gave a talk to the University of the Third Age. And I was saying, if you receive a present, you don't like it, why do you keep it? Why do you keep it? Or you put it somewhere just in case a person comes and sees, so that the person sees when, if you kept the present. I said, the person gave it to you. You do whatever you want with that present. You don't have to keep it. And she said, well, I kept a vase that my ex-mother-in-law, who now passed away 20 years ago, gave me, and she was, really a nasty person. I still have that vase. I said, why do you keep it? Because every time you see it, you remember that person and the negativity that person brought to you or in your life. So why do you keep it? Sell it, eBay, or, there's so many ways nowadays to get rid of things. So yeah, surround yourself with what you love and what is beautiful to you. And I keep saying quality is much better than quantity.
You talk about back in the days when Captain Cook came here and how there was real restrictions put on the Aboriginal people, and now a lot of people are feeling, you say, similar restrictions. Is it the same, or is it just that much different?
It's your freedom that is restricted. And the freedom to live the way that you are free. You were born free. And so here we are not free anymore.
Because you were doing a lot of travelling. Do you feel restricted?
That doesn't stop me. Doesn't stop me. I follow the rules, absolutely. But it's... I've done amazing trips during the COVID-19. I was stuck for a few months in Canberra because I couldn't go out, or I couldn't find a job because everything was shut down last year. But I've just come back from the East Kimberley, where I was working. So there are ways. Australia is such a beautiful country. Why do we need to travel abroad for the moment where we are not allowed to do? Might as well do the most of what we've got and discover Australia. We've got amazing places.
What area of Australia do you think you've been able to have the most effect if the environment is so impactful of what you do?
I don't have to have the most impact on anything. I mean, as I said, I'm a visitor. And the work that I bring is to support people, or to bring potential changes in their environment, in their physical environment, or in their education, or in what they want to. And very often we have a lot of communications going on, and possibilities. And it's really lifting the restrictions, the restricting aspect of having to follow all the paperwork, all the funding bodies, or all the government regulation, and to step away from that and say, okay, how can we make it easier for you to understand? And then how can we flow? And it is exactly the same that what we do in the house. It's about the flow of energy in your home, in your mind, and it's exactly the same with paperwork. How can we make it simple? It looks like everything is a bit complicated these days, whatever you need to do. And I'll give you an example. I've been in contact with some communities, non-Aboriginal communities, who had the fires happening, and I volunteered to support some people that are in regional areas. And those people are suffering from PTSD, not from the fires, which were devastating, but from the paperwork that needs to come afterwards. So we don't talk about, I support them with more about the aspect of how is it that they can connect with the land, and what is it that, what happened in their life, and some people lost, horses or cattle or family members or houses, or the whole area was gone, and they still have nothing for the moment. So long after, a year and a half after, nothing is there, still camping.
Is that better for them, though, when you talk about less clutter and less is more? Is it a good thing in a way?
I say to people, if you've never been hungry in your life, you can't understand what it is. Okay? And I think it's the same. People who've never lost everything, it's very hard for them to understand what it means to start from scratch again. When I moved from Europe to Australia, I didn't take much with me. So you start from scratch again. You know, when I go and work in communities in remote places, I go with one luggage and that's it. So you can live out of 20 kilos of suitcase wherever you're going to be. Of course, then you've got a furnished environment with whatever you need to clear and cleanse from the past people who were there before. But it's an amazing experience, very humbling experience to be able to do that.
What are the big things you like to pack when you are going to some of these places when you don't have a lot to be able to take?
What do I pack? I pack really practical clothes usually. When you go in those remote places, you've got a code of clothes that, you know, you can't go with short shorts, for example, but I'm too old for that anyway. But, you know, you need to pay respect to people, and the way you dress is really important. The way you approach people, they're going to definitely look at what are you wearing and how do you behave, and if you're respecting culture.
What's their reaction to you then when you are coming into these communities and you are observing and you are watching? How are you helping them, and what's their reaction to that?
It's all the way that you're engaging with people. I'm not observing just like, you know, you just scan something and then you notice, because I've done so many houses visits and offices and buildings. You see when you enter what is not working. So we talk about a few things, and then we started, you know, making the archives or having a look at how we can make the office feels better. You know, it doesn't take long before they get into it, and they're doing it. I've revamped, I remember many years ago, a whole art center in one of those remote communities. And sales started to pick up, people started to come, more people started to be aware of, they felt better when they came there. So you don't have to explain anything, you just are there. I never put the two Feng Shui words together when I go there. I'm not saying anything about it. This is who I am, and this is my truth. I know it's working, and I don't impose on anybody to believe that. The Feng Shui became really those two words, which means wind and water, became very popular with Lillian Tu, who is a very prolific author. She's got about 200 books, I think, but she's from Malaysia and Chinese origin. So thanks to her, we know about Feng Shui, but the Chinese way, it doesn't matter. I've always felt difficult to use those two words because I don't apply it with a Feng Shui, with a Chinese Feng Shui. But people know what I'm talking about when I say Feng Shui. They say, oh, yeah.
So is there an Australian Feng Shui or way of integrating this sort of philosophy?
Feng Shui existed all over the world with different names. It's what the Druids were doing. It's really connecting with nature that is more important than the three-legged frogs that's going to bring you money.
What did you do when you started to get away from the Chinese Feng Shui? With, obviously, you said you had Chinese artifacts. What did you do with them? Did you give them away? Did you throw them away? Was it important to release them?
Yeah, I probably discarded them. Such a long time ago, I can't remember. The only thing that I kept for a long time was the Bagua mirror, which is a protection. These days I'm using other facts, other objects that I believe would help me for that.
So when you talk about Australian artefacts, what sort of things should people be looking to utilise if they're trying to improve their living situation?
I think the first thing would be to recognise that they are living on Aboriginal land, that this land was never seized, and to have an object that symbolises the local Aboriginal or the Aboriginal where they had contact, to be paying that respect to the energy of that Aboriginal essence, I would say. Yeah. So I would recommend, rather than having objects from all over the world and, buy a piece of art and put it on display. Something that you like, that you feel drawn, and it doesn't need to be specifically from your area. There's nothing where you are, but it might be linked with a souvenir. So the one that's behind me is a painting called Caterpillar Dreaming, and it's from Maria Curley. She's a beautiful artist from Calchedy. Calchedy is Fregon, so which is on APY land, so northwest of South Australia. I had very good memories of very good time there. I felt very grounded. I loved the place. And when I saw this painting, I fell in love with it. And I thought it's always better to have one than 10. And so this is how that's how I see it today, yeah.
Are we more embracing the Aboriginal aspect of their culture in white Australia these days, do you think? Or has it got to come a long way?
I think we are in the next, it's already started 2 years ago from an astrological point of view, and it's going to come more and more in the next few years that people are going to realize that First Nation are quite powerful and are quite knowledgeable into whatever we thought was not important at the time. And connecting with nature, look what's happening for the moment. The imbalances we have in nature is bringing fires, floods. You know, when people were burning, the traditional burning that you can still see if you go to Papua New Guinea or the north side, you can see when you're flying above there. There was nothing in the south side because now they need to ask a permit to do some fires in some areas of Australia. So it's again paperwork rather than letting people do whatever they did best, and they do best, is to looking after country, after the land. So you've got a rise of the Aboriginal essence for the moment, and we need to embrace that because we've got so much to learn from them.
I really like the fact that the New Zealanders sing Maori as well as English in their national anthem. Should there be that sort of integration in Australia with some Aboriginal dialect or dialects in our national song?
I don't call them dialects, Mark, they are languages. And in the languages, you might have some dialects. So we still have in Australia a lot of Aboriginal languages that are still very actively spoken. Most of the people that I worked with, English was their fourth or fifth language. And language, what we need to understand, language is country. The birds that are singing around you, the wind in the trees has a sound that will be different in Canberra than where you are. So you're going to have language is country, and we need to hear that language because it's a sound that you heard when you were in your mum's womb. And we need to have those languages. It is not one size fits all. And I think that each Aboriginal group would be having their flag. Yeah, each Aboriginal group have their songs, they have their stories, they're singing it all the time when they do their ceremony. So they've got their stories. So I don't think that we need one language translating the national anthem, because each group of population already have their stories and their songs. So it's not me to discuss this. I think I will leave it up to people, and that's giving a lot of polemics, but we need to understand that language is really important. Here in Canberra, some schools are teaching Ngunnawal, so which is a local language. And where I go in other places, in the remote places, definitely people speak their language every day, all the time.
When you first came to Australia, were you surprised by the interaction or lack thereof between white Australia and Aboriginals that you've seen change over time?
Yes, absolutely. And I think there is one thing I remember. I saw Mick Dodson a few years ago, and I went to see him, and I said, you know, we now have cultural awareness when we go to work, and we've got that part of his induction. But again, there is no one size fits all. A Yolngu that is in Arnhem Land is very different than a Koori person, you know. The language is different, the landscape is different, everything is. You know, the shape of the body is different. And it's exactly the same. And people start understanding when I say, okay, you understand Europe? You're not going to ask a Greek person to go and teach people in Denmark. Yeah. You don't have the same color of skin. You don't have the same food. You don't have the same look. You don't have the same color. You don't have the same alphabet. And you don't understand the language. So we need to understand all that part, and hopefully people are going to, you know, become more aware of their local language, let alone to the name of the Aboriginals that were there before.
You talk about the astrological aspect of things changing. What's happening there?
So there is with the planets, don't ask me which one, because I've got a fantastic friend who's an astrologer, and so I'm listening to what she's saying, so it's not from me that it comes. And she said that there is a rise of all the First Nations for the moment, because they have different needs or priorities than the Western world.
Because in your website, and you send out regular predictions, how do you make those predictions of what you see will happen and what is happening in the world?
These are intuitive predictions. So I did that for many years, Mark, and I stopped doing that a few years ago because it was a lot of work, first of all, and now I'm a lot on the road and traveling a lot, so I just stopped that a few years ago. It was very interesting because a lot of people were saying that resonated with them. So I've created 900 designs. Each has a number. So like people are playing tarot cards, right? So I can't print 900, so I've got 900 designs, and they look like diaphragms. And so it's just an opening of what is happening in some part of their lives. And people were saying, wow, this is it. And then I was giving some tips to say, all right, okay, it's okay to have that happening in your life, and this is how you can get over it. Or I had some emails or phone calls from people saying, this is really amazing what you've written. Out of the 9 things that you're writing, I've got 7 that are absolutely me for the moment. Wow, how do you know? And I say, because we all evolved towards the same. Those you didn't have to read those predictions every month. But those you were going to read, they were resonating with you. And this is how it is to be aligned. So the alignment to the oneness is really important. So we all one, as long as and people need to start understanding that no matter what color we are, I can say black or white, but I'll put the blue in as well because, coming from Belgium where the Smurfs started, so we have the blue color there, light blue and dark blue. And so we are all one, and we are all part of such an amazing universe. And once you start delving into the stars, and what I would recommend is a video called Star Stories of the Dreaming by the producer Ellie Gilbert. You can find that on Vimeo. Then you start understanding the stories that the stars have, and you might not understand everything. I had to watch it a few times to start understanding a little bit, but that's the Aboriginal approach of the stars and the universe, and it's just amazing.
How do you apply that into your life?
Wow, just like my life has changed so many times in so many, after, every decades. I don't know. I'm not the woman that I was when I was 15, I had different interests. I was on a motorbike. I was, when I was younger, I was totally a different person. I was logistics director when I was in Europe. Here I've been working with people and for the well-being. So it's very different. And I'm not sure, I can dab into a lot of things, from early childhood director to a CEO role that I did as well. I mean, I, I can touch a lot of things. And I feel that this is part of keeping me young, keeping me active, and my brain active as well. All right, okay. And I would say to people, the time where you were starting your first job when you were 20 and you were retiring at 60, staying 40 years in the same environment, it's totally gone. You know, my family overseas in Europe, they still are living in the same house, doing the same job, doing the same thing, the same furniture. We need change. We need change. We need less to make everything else happen. If you've got everything in the house, you never go out. You need to get out there. You need to go hiking. You need to go rock climbing. You need to do abseiling. You need to be in contact with nature wherever you can.
So COVID really has put a dampener for a lot of people then.
That's right. That's when you start surrounding yourself with pictures of nature. All right. Okay. So I've got one calendar that was from a few years. I cut the dates and I put that beautiful photo there and I can see it and it makes me alive again. All right. Surround yourself with pictures of nature rather than pictures of people or single people or I don't know, whatever you like, honestly. But you can, if you love cars, have a car that is driving in a beautiful landscape rather than just on the road. So you just encompass the rest. And that's how you start feeling better.
Respect seems to be pretty high on your agenda in your approach to life. Are more people coming on board with your way of thinking, or is it something that you really want to try and get that message across still?
I think a lot of people start to be more respectful, you know. Giving the example, when I remember last year when we went to the shop, we had to be 1.5 meters away from people. People were expecting that, yeah. So that distance. Now with the vaccination, I think that people think that they are invincible, so they don't respect that anymore. So at some stage, they will become aware that they still need to have some distance, if they, you know, because it's not because they don't have the symptoms that they can't transmit it. So I think the respect is something that people are becoming more aware. So that's not on an Aboriginal point of view, just on a general point of view worldwide. We need to start understanding how are we respected with the decisions that are taken by the government. And I'm not talking about Australia here because I've got friends in Europe and in France where it's becoming very dramatic now, and the people are going to be reacting very soon to the decision that the President Macron has taken. People need to have a vaccine passport to be able to attend some events. They're even talking about not accepting people to go to the shops anymore. You know, it's just like crazy. Whoa, stop it. What is it? You know, where are we? Why are we put in the boxes? Why do we need to be controlled that much rather than to be free? And I know, again, the density of population in some countries is really, really high. So we are more lucky, touch wood, in Australia and in New Zealand. But we've got to respect everything, not only people, but nature.
How can we use nature to fight the COVID syndrome and what effect it's had on our society?
Nature is your best medicine for everything. You go out sport, you go for a walk, you look at the flowers, you breathe in fresh air. Not your television is going to give you that. You might have a good fun movies, but you know, you might have one a week. If you're lucky, everything is about violence and killing, and it becomes whatever you watch is whatever you become. Yeah. So go out in nature because you come from there.
What do your family think about you with your fairly progressive ideas? You say that they are still doing the same thing in the same place. What is your family, how do they take you these days?
Well, you know, this is who they are, and I respect them because that's what they want to do. But they see me going, you know, changing countries, continents, doing different jobs, and they're quite amazed on what they haven't done in their life. And I think it's a regret that they have. I don't need people to be all like me. don't misunderstand. I'm not saying I'm right and they're wrong. They needed comfort and security, while I needed adventure. And we're all different. And that's what we are making this world population. We're all different. So not everybody needs to be like me. But sometimes when you are doing the same job, the same thing, when something new comes into your life, you just like, wow, didn't expect that. Yeah. Well, I like that. So I continue to do it. So that's why change to me is really important. But I'm not saying everybody needs to. But if you're not happy where you are at for the moment in life, just change something.
Are too many people afraid of change?
For the moment, definitely. In this current situation, suddenly, yeah, they're scared. People are scared for the moment.
And what could they do to ease that fear?
Observe the fear. Where does it come from? Do they want to keep it or they want to let it go? And then it's up to them to decide, not to me, but that's observe. Oh, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I've got the anxiety. Oh, what is it coming from? It might be physical, might be physiological, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I'm saying, okay, hang on. All of a sudden you wake up with an anxiety, you had a bad dream, or you think of something. So do you need to keep that? What is the worst case that if this is happening? What's the worst case scenario? Yeah. So, well, you've got plan A, plan B, plan C, and then you have the whole alphabet, if you like. But if you're stuck into wanting, and if you're stuck into controlling, you're very likely to be sad or disappointed.
What are you afraid of?
No, don't know. Don't know yet. I'll tell you when it comes. Don't know. I jumped out of a plane. I went into aerobatics with a plane. I did some abseiling. So physically, I don't know. I suppose dementia.
So what scares you about dementia then?
It's not being able to remember the short-term memory. It's to lose that short-term memory, I think. Yeah, and not being aware of or doing silly things. I've got some family members who have dementia, so I've seen it from a very young age, and I find this is really sad. So, is it a fear? Not sure if it's a fear because I do everything I can to stay healthy.
Do you miss any part of Belgium?
Now I can have chocolates here now, so that's all good. Yes, the food probably at some stage. Yes, the food, and Belgians are very friendly. They befriend you very quickly. So that is something that was very different from me here in Australia. You need to know people for a long time before you get a real friend, or you need to know them since school. While over there, you meet new people and, you're part of the team already.
A lot of people would consider Australians pretty friendly, and you've found that not to be the case.
I'm sorry, I'm going to shock some people. It's more superficial. It's not as deep. The word friend, we've got different words in French. We've got comrades, you've got mates, you've got friends, you've got acquaintances. All right, okay? So a friend to me, when I say friendly, is somebody that when you're in need, you can rely on, that are going to do everything they can for you. All right? And I've seen that it can happen in Australia, absolutely, like everywhere in the world. But in where I come from, you can have a friend after a few visits or after a few weeks or a few days. Just say, okay, you just rock up and you say, listen, I need a bed to sleep. Can I stay? Yeah, no problem. I wouldn't do that here in Australia.
What do you put that down to?
Don't know. I don't know. I know that Belgians are very friendly. They're very open and they are very welcoming. Not sure.
How did that affect you when you came here? Did you expect that?
That was something that I struggled in the beginning, is the lack of, because you move away from your country, so you don't really look for people from Belgium here. All right. So you become, you come here for a new life. So you're not going to repeat what you've done before. But that's indeed something that I recall was oh yeah. I'll give you an example. When you say, how you going? I'm well, thank you. And then you turn around and you walk away. Well, if you're asking me that in my language, you're going to have my whole story. And that's a big difference. It's the language and the ways things are in the language. How you going? And I'm going to say, oh, yes, I'm fine. I did this morning. I ate this last night. You're going to have a full conversation. While here's, how do you do? And you don't want to know. Just says, hello, how do you do? You repeat the same.
What is it like in the Aboriginal culture that you've experienced in that friendliness and interaction between people?
I'm not Aboriginal and not from Australia. And Aboriginal means from the origins. We are all Aboriginals from somewhere. Okay, so I'm not an Aboriginal Australian. I'm just very interested and to learn from them. And once you come across as being quiet and respectful and listening, you need to listen. And if you're not listening, you're not going to be, listening to any stories. And it didn't happen overnight, trust me. A few years ago, it was, takes a while. These days, it may or may not happen easier. It all depends where and with whom.
But are they a friendly culture, the Aboriginals that you've observed?
A lot of them, yes. A lot of them. As long as you are listening and respecting, you will be, taken to, they're going to tell you a story, or it all depends on what you are after. I don't know. I just, like I'm explaining to you, I can feel in my heart is opening. I can feel that. I don't know, when we talk, I might be very naive. I don't know. I might be very, my ways of seeing things, but I've seen some amazing people. I've met some really strong law people there too, traditional law. And we've got so much to learn. We're just not even at kindergarten. They know so much more than we do in that world. We are in the physical, material world only. The other spiritual world, they know so much more.
What are some of the things that have struck you that you've really gone, wow, that's pretty amazing, that you've learnt in your observations?
Well, I had quite a few amazing experiences that are a bit too private to share that with you here. But man, this has changed my life. It has changed my life. I have seen things, I have felt things that were so strong, and I'm just like, wow, it blows you away. I can't give you more details, I'm sorry.
So what's the biggest thing, though, for you still to conquer and still learn and achieve in your life?
I don't have long-term goals anymore. I think I live the moment as much as I can. I think that's the best way to be in the current COVID circumstances as well, is to take every step as we go. Once it's going to be gone, because it's going to go, all right, okay? In a year and a half, it should be much, much better. I know it's still a long way away, but probably after first term in 2023, let's hope it's going to disappear. And then life will be, is it going to go back to what it was? I'm not sure. But you've got to make the best moment of every moment you've got in your life. Love your family, love your friends, love your surroundings. And that's how you reach happiness. And I think it's more and more living in the moment and being part of the oneness that is more important to me today.
So is that the thing, that we can get a positive out of the COVID situation, that we can rediscover a whole bunch of things like family?
Yeah, stay away from the news and stay away from the television. Just go on when you really need to. Watch some funny videos, go on YouTube. You've got some amazing talks like those that you do, Mark, as well, and TED Talks, and learn, because there's never enough of learning. Education is key. and you've got some podcasts on all sorts of levels. I was listening the other day to the story of Leopold II, who invaded Congo and the atrocities that were there. So it's not always positive what I'm listening to, but this is also what is happening around the world or happened around the world, and what, see the difference. I keep saying to people, from generation to generation, we are a filter. Yeah. My parents had another filter above them from their parents, and as it goes. So you don't want to repeat the same pattern, that what you had suffered or maybe enjoyed, keep the enjoying part with your parents, but you don't want to have the suffering. Yeah. So you need to filter that so you don't give that to your kids. And it's exactly the same that needs to happen in the education system, is that we can't keep doing what we did before. We need to have, some more fun, some more respect, and some interesting topics, rather than coming up with some really harsh, I'm talking about primary school here, up to whatever you want, but it's really, you need to learn how to enjoy life as well. And what is it that is important for those kids? What is important? Is it being on your phone? Is it being on your tablet? Or is it to kick a ball outside in the backyard? Or is it to play board game? I play board game on a regular basis. I love it. And I think the board games is making, the connections with people that are different from the virtual reality.
If someone wants to find out about what you're doing and follow your adventures, how do they keep in touch or get in touch with you?
I've got a website which is called fengshuisteps.com.au. I've got a blog which is fengshuisteps.wordpress.com. And you can always email me at fengshuisteps@hotmail.com. So tell me what you want, tell me where you struggle, and I'm quite happy to send you a little email, or we can go on Zoom and have a conversation. If you want to have a consultation, I do that all over the world. So you ask me for a quote, I give you, it takes hours to do a consultation. You don't do that in an hour or two. It takes a long time. And Mark, it's quite amazing, because a lot of my clients that I've had for the last 25 years in Australia, I'm still in touch with them. I'm still in touch, or they are still in touch with me. It's more that way. You might not hear from someone for 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden it goes, "Oh, Roseline, I've got a question." And then I answer, I said, "Oh, yeah, that's good, cool." And then they keep in touch the way they want to. There's no obligation. And it's really the way that people want it to be for them.
What's the biggest change people can make to improve what's going on right now?
Everybody's got different priorities, Mark. So you really need to feel it in your heart. You need to believe in yourself. You need to believe it's going to happen. So you've got to remove all those barriers that you've got, all those restrictions that you've got in your head to say, yes, I can do this. That's what I say to people. Yes, everybody is restricted, but, for the moment I'm here, I'm waiting that the borders open, or I just need to go and see if I can isolate for a couple of weeks somewhere, which is not my best favorite thing to do, but if it has to be, I will do it. And it's because deep inside me, that where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do, I'm excited about it. And if you're not excited about something, then you just go, But if you're excited about it, your aura, you're vibrating totally differently than if you just have to do something. Yeah. And that's what I'd like everybody to understand, and the education system as well, is motivate people with whatever they like. And then you add the things they might not like as well, but just give them that option. Give them that excitement about something.
Well, your excitement is infectious. And Roseline Deleu, thanks for joining us over the bonnet.
Thank you very much, Mark. Keep the good work. Thank you.